Hey, it's Vanessa from CraftyGemini.com. Today's tutorial is on the perfect project to whip up just in time for the holidays. A stocking. You can customize it and embellish it any way you want. It's double-sided, it's fully lined, and I also show you how to make the little loop so you can hang it up. Let's get started. So the first thing we need in order to make our stocking is our actual pattern that we'll be following to cut out our stocking pieces. In this case, I like to use freezer paper, and I'll show you why in a little bit. But you see a general stocking shape here. To get this shape, you can either take an old stocking that you already have and trace around, or you can just eyeball it. Just take a pencil and kind of make a general stocking shape, and that'll work just fine. What you want to do is make it about ½ an inch bigger on all sides than you want it to finish, because you have to account for your seam allowances. As you can see in this stocking here, if I lay it up next to my pattern piece, you can see that the pattern piece itself is a little bit bigger, and that's exactly how you want your pieces to be. So the fabric you see here is what I've decided to have for the front and the back of my stocking. So I like to layer them pretty sides touching each other. Make sure that your piece is obviously long enough and wide enough to fit the size of the stocking pattern that you've decided on. Then if you use freezer paper, you want to put it shiny side down, because if we hit it with an iron, it's actually going to stick and hold on, so it'll be a lot easier for us to cut around the paper. If you're just using newsprint or some other kind of paper, just go ahead and pin it to your fabric so it holds steady for you to cut. Now, I'm using freezer paper, so I'm just hitting it with an iron just like this. And if you do this, it's going to stick to your fabric, like you see here. And so now I'll just go ahead and put a few pins to hold the two layers of the fabric together, and I'll cut around this to get the front and the back of my stocking. Now that I've cut around and cut out my two stocking pieces, we can remove the freezer paper. And this is completely reusable, okay? So just store it away and use it again if you need to. And you see when I open this up, we have the pretty sides of our front and our back side of our stocking piece. Now what you're going to do is repeat the same steps that we did here using the same template, but this time, not for the outside fabrics. You want to figure out which fabrics you want as your lining. They can be different like you see here, or they can be the same like I did in this one. So just repeat the same steps and cut two more pieces for your lining. So here you see I've done the same thing for my lining fabric and ended up with two pieces as well. Now we have to cut out the pieces for our cuff. So for your cuff, you're also going to need to make a template for it. So all you're going to do is measure across the top of your stocking and then cut a piece that in width is the same as the top, and then the length of it, the height right here, you want it to measure 3 inches. And that's going to depend also on the size of your stocking. If you're making a smaller stocking, obviously you're not going to have a cuff that's 3 inches wide. But just try and figure it out based on the size of your stocking, how wide you think you want that cuff to be. For your cuff, you're going to do the same thing you did with the stocking, the pieces for the outside and also for the lining. I have a piece here, a larger piece that I folded in half so that I have two pretty sides touching, and it's on the fold. And then I'm just going to put my cuff template on here, hit it down, and cut around it so I end up with my two pieces. Aside from the actual fabric pieces you need of your stocking, you're also going to need to repeat this method and cut out two corresponding pieces of batting. So I have a really thin polyester batting here, folded in half, and I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing I did with the fabric. So before you start sewing, make sure that you have the following pieces. We have 4 pieces of the stocking template cut out of fabric, and that's 2 for the outside and 2 for the lining. Then we also have 2 cuffs here, and then 2 pieces of batting as well. So now the next step is to take your cuff pieces, put it pretty side down, and you're going to fold the 2 long sides of the cuff in about 1/4 inch and just press it in place. I'm going to repeat it on the other long side. Now that I've prepared my cuff, all we need to do is attach it to the outside stocking piece. And I'm just going to lay it here. Now I'm going to pin this in place, and with a regular straight stitch I'm going to stitch across here real close to the edge and do the same thing at the top. And then you're going to do the other cuff the same way and attach it to the other side of the stocking as well. Here you see I've prepped both my stocking pieces with the stitched cuff on. Then what I did was to put one of the batting pieces behind each one of my stocking pieces. Now I'm going to layer these on top of each other with pretty sides touching. And one thing you want to make sure is that right here where the cuffs meet, I like to match them so it's all continuous, perfect like that. And then I'll hold it in place and then put a pin there, because you're going to want to pin this all the way around. So match the other side where the cuffs meet as well and stitch all the way around. Make sure you leave the top open. Here you see I've stitched my stocking all the way around. What you want to do now is trim some of the excess batting, especially where you see bulky stuff. Just trim. Whenever we have edges that come in like this here, you want to cut notches, maybe about 1/4 of an inch next to each other, and just clip close to the line like that. And what this is going to do is to allow the actual stocking piece to move and to give it that nice curved edge once we flip it inside out. So here you see I've clipped my notches both here where there's a little curvature, here on the outside, and on these inside curves as well. Now we can turn our stocking inside out. So it's looking pretty good, but remember we always press after we stitch a seam. So just press it nice and flat, and if you want you can check your points here. Yep, they match up nicely. Perfect. And just give it a nice press. Now what we need to do is sew our lining together. I've layered both of our lining pieces pretty sides touching, and I've gone ahead and marked about a 2 to 3 inch line here that is a reminder to keep this unstitched. So I'm going to stitch from up here to here, and I'm going to jump up, leave this open, and stitch all the way around the rest of my stocking. Now that our stocking lining is all sewn together, we want to grab our scissors and do the same thing we did to the other outside pieces of the stocking, which is clipping the notches here and along those inside and outside curves. And here's a quick way to cut those little notches. Just grab the fabric, pinch it in two, and on a diagonal like that, just cut. Make sure you don't clip into the stitching. Now to make the little hang tie, the little loop for our stocking, I have a piece of fabric here that's about 2 inches wide. All you're going to do is fold it in half, and you press it in place to create that crease right there. And then you're going to grab one side and fold it towards the center and do the same with the top. Then you press it in place again, and then you're going to fold the whole thing in half. So you end up with about a 1/2 inch wide strip. Now I'm going to go to my sewing machine, and on the side that opens, I'm going to stitch with a straight stitch real nice and close to that edge. Our loop is finished, and it measures about 6 inches in length. So here's the fun part where we put it all together. Notice I have my lining with the ugly side of the fabric facing out, and I have the outside of my stocking with the pretty side facing out. Now I'm going to open up my lining. You see the pretty sides are hidden in there. And then I'm going to put my hand inside the outside part of the stocking and slip it inside the lining. It looks weird, but trust me, it works. Arrange all the raw edges here so that they're all matching up. And now what you want to do is pin around the top edge, because this is where you're going to sew. But the first thing I want to do is actually slip in my loop. So I'm going to fold it in half to create the loop. And then I'm going to put it loop side in on the back side of the stocking. Okay? So don't put it here because it's going to hang off the front. You want to put it back here somewhere. So you take it loop side in between the stocking and the lining, and I'm going to put it here. And what you want to do is match up the raw edges again with the raw edges of everything. All the raw edges of the lining, the loop, and of the outside stocking should be matching up. So we're going to put a pin here. Now we just want to make sure that we're matching all our raw edges of all our pieces of fabric here. And we're going to pin all the way around. Then we'll take it to our machine, and with about a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, we're just going to stitch with a straight stitch all the way around the entire opening. Now that we've sewn all the way around the top and secured our loop in place, locate your opening that you left in the lining and just carefully pull out your entire stocking through this little hole. So I've pulled out the outside part, but you still got to keep flipping the lining inside out, so continue with that until you get everything nice and flat. So this is what you end up with, and of course we want to take our iron and give it a nice press to set all those seams in place. Now that we've pressed everything, we want to go to our opening and just tuck those raw edges in and press it in place. And then you can either hand stitch this or just take it to your machine and do a little straight stitch across the edge just to secure that hole shut. Now that our little hole here has been sewn shut, the only thing left to do is to push the lining into the stocking. Just work your fingers to the toe area and to the heel area so it fits nice and flat inside. And you can give it another nice press with your iron, but your stocking is pretty much done. So here's our finished stocking, fully lined and with a little loop to hang it. I hope you all enjoyed my tutorial, and if you're interested in other sewing and quilting related tutorials, you can check me out at craftygemini.com.